1.
Is that
The
yours,
school
Lily?
everyone trusted had a
I've never
secret
seen this
underground
before.
shadow. The school looked like a place built to promise safety, yet was quietly carrying something far more dangerous beneath its polished reputation. Ridgewell Preparatory School stood in the heart of an affluent American suburb, surrounded by manicured lawns, expensive homes, and the kind of families who believed danger only existed outside their gates. No one questioned what happened inside its walls, because everything visible suggested perfection. That belief was exactly what made it the perfect hiding place. Ethan Vale arrived after sunset, stepping into a world that already seemed to ignore him. He was a new night shift maintenance worker, hired quietly through a contractor who asked no questions about his past. Ethan was young, practical, and tired in a way that came from responsibility rather than age. He carried himself like someone who had learned early that survival often depended on staying unnoticed. Most staff members treated him like background noise. They passed him in hallways without acknowledgement, their conversations filled with private school events, donation meetings, and board discussions that never included someone like him. Ethan did not belong to their world of privilege, and that fact shaped how invisible he became. What no one at Ridgewell knew was why he accepted the job in the first place. His younger sister, Nora, was recovering from a serious medical condition that had drained their savings and forced Ethan to take night work wherever he could find it. Every shift he worked inside the school was a step toward keeping her stable, toward preventing their lives from collapsing further. On his third night, something subtle changed. While checking maintenance lines near the oldest wing of the building, Ethan noticed a faint chemical smell lingering in the air after midnight. It was not strong enough to alarm anyone, but it did not belong in a school that had supposedly shut down its science department for renovations months earlier. The scent always appeared near the same hallway, as if it was leaking through the structure itself. He learned that the basement beneath that section had been sealed years ago after what officials called a minor flood. The story was simple enough that no one ever questioned it again. Concrete barriers, locked doors, and official warnings made a forgotten space, the kind of place people mentally erase from a building's existence. But Ethan began noticing details that did not fit the story. Late at night, unmarked trucks arrived near the service entrance delivering crates labeled science supplies. Even though the labs were supposedly inactive, no staff member signed the delivery logs, and no records matched the shipments. The boxes simply appeared, then disappeared behind locked doors. Security cameras added another layer of unease. At exactly 1:17 a.m., several of them subtly rotated away from specific corridors, as if guided by someone with access to their controls. Ethan noticed the pattern, but did not yet understand its meaning. He only felt the growing certainty that the building was watching itself differently when no one else was supposed to be awake. Then came the sound. One night, while passing the sealed basement corridor, Ethan heard a faint mechanical hum rising from below the floor. It was steady, controlled, and far too deliberate to be part of any normal building system. It felt like something breathing through machines hidden underground. When Ethan placed his ear against the cold concrete floor to listen more closely, the hum shifted. Beneath it, he heard something impossible. Footsteps moving underneath him. The footsteps beneath the floor did not fade from Ethan Vale's mind. They lingered like a pressure he could not explain, pushing him toward answers the building seemed determined to hide. By the next shift, suspicion had turned into focus. He began studying Ridgewell Preparatory School, not as a workplace, but as a structure that might not be what it claimed to be. While reviewing maintenance access records in a small office near the boiler room, Ethan found something unusual. A set of old architectural blueprints stored in a cracked folder labeled as Archive Renovation Plans. Most pages matched the school as he knew it: hallways, classrooms, storage units. But as he flipped through them, he noticed a clear break in sequence. One page was missing entirely. The gap was not random. The pagination suggested it should have shown the foundation level of the original building, a section that, according to current records, should not have existed in any accessible form. Yet its absence felt intentional, like something had been physically removed rather than misplaced. That discovery led him to Marla Quinn. Marla worked as a records clerk, an elderly woman who had spent over 3 decades inside Ridgewell's administrative system. She knew where every file belonged, and more importantly, what files were never supposed to be found. When Ethan asked about older building schematics, she did not answer directly. Instead, her movement slowed, her eyes shifting toward the hallway as if the walls themselves might be listening. Her response came in fragments, careful, measured, and deliberately vague. Some parts of the school, she implied, were not meant to be mapped anymore. When Ethan mentioned the sealed basement, something subtle changed in her expression. It was not confusion. It was recognition. And beneath that, fear she tried too hard to hide. Outside the office, Ethan faced a different kind of resistance. Senior staff brushed past him in conversations, dismissing his questions before he could finish them. To them, he was just maintenance, a background worker with no authority to question anything beyond broken pipes or flickering lights. That dismissal did not discourage him. It sharpened his attention. In an abandoned utility drawer near the gym corridor, Ethan found a key ring coated in dust. Most keys were ordinary, unlabeled, worn from years of use. But one stood out immediately. It was painted red, as if marked deliberately, with no identification tag attached. It felt out of place, not just physically, but intentionally so. That night, he followed the chemical scent again. It led him behind the gymnasium, into a storage room filled with unused equipment and forgotten maintenance supplies. The air was colder there, heavier in a way that suggested sealed space beneath it. Behind stacked wrestling mats, Ethan discovered a hidden metal panel embedded into the wall. The red key fit perfectly. When it turned, the panel released with soft mechanical click, revealing a narrow concrete stairwell descending into darkness. The air rising from below was different, warmer, denser, carrying a sterile odor that did not belong in any part of school. Each step downward felt like crossing into a space that had been sealed not just physically, but intentionally erased from memory. Halfway down, Ethan noticed something that froze his attention. Fresh boot prints layered over dust that should have remained untouched for years. Someone had been here recently. Someone who knew this place existed. At the bottom landing, near the edge of the stairwell, he found a school identification badge partially covered in grime. The name was still readable. Caleb Rusk, a chemistry teacher who had supposedly resigned months earlier without explanation, without farewell, without record of what came next. Before Ethan could process the implication, a heavy door somewhere deeper in the structure slammed shut, echoing through the stairwell like a warning. He turned instinctively toward the stairs above, and the hidden panel clicked behind him, sealing the exit completely. Upstairs, Ridgewell Preparatory School continued its illusion of normal life. Students worked through assignments, teachers followed schedules, and the building carried the calm rhythm of education as if nothing beneath it could possibly exist. Yet below that polished surface, something entirely different had been operating, hidden, controlled, and disturbingly alive. Ethan Vale stood at the bottom of the sealed stairwell, with only his flashlight and phone, their weak light barely holding back the darkness. The air here no longer felt like part of school. It felt engineered. Every breath carried a sterile weight, as if the environment had been carefully maintained rather than forgotten. The stairwell opened into a long underground corridor reinforced with old brickwork, fused with newer steel supports. That detail alone shattered the official story of a sealed basement. This was not abandoned space. It had been expanded, reinforced, and repurposed long after the school's original construction. As Ethan moved forward, the corridor widened into a structured underground facility. Metal tables were arranged in precise rows, not scattered like storage, but positioned like active workstations. Sealed containers lined the walls, industrial ventilation systems hummed overhead, and protective suits hung neatly as if ready for immediate use. Warning labels marked doors and cabinets, controlling access rather than explaining history. Nothing here suggested neglect. Everything suggested ongoing operation. Ethan realized the sealed basement narrative was false. This was not a forgotten area of the school. It was functioning space, hidden in plain sight beneath classrooms filled with students who had no idea what existed under them. A heavy emotional pressure built inside him as the reality settled. While students studied upstairs, something illegal and highly organized had been operating directly beneath their feet. The contrast between innocence above and secrecy below made the discovery feel almost unreal, as if two separate worlds were stacked on top of each other. He began recording short video clips on his phone, careful not to disturb anything. The footage captured industrial equipment, controlled storage systems, and signs of continuous use. This was not decay. It was maintenance. Someone was actively keeping this place alive. Near one wall, stacked crates bore Ridgewell Preparatory School's official branding. The logo was clean, professional, and completely out of place in a hidden underground environment. The implication was immediate and unsettling. These supplies were not stolen from the school. They were coming through the school itself. Deeper inside, Ethan found a corkboard mounted above a metal desk. It displayed schedules, initials, coded entries, and operational notes that had nothing to do with education. One name appeared repeatedly across different sections of the board: Dr. Victor Hale, the respected headmaster, the public face of discipline, safety, and academic excellence, a man trusted by parents, staff, and donors alike. Seeing his name embedded in this underground system transformed the entire discovery into something far more serious than hidden activity. It suggested involvement at a structural level, not coincidence. Ethan's attention shifted when he noticed a small backpack wedged beneath a metal table. It was dusty but intact, as if it had been hidden quickly rather than abandoned over time. Inside was a notebook labeled with careful handwriting: Lily Mercer, a scholarship student who had recently been accused of stealing lab equipment and quietly removed from the school's narrative. Officially, she had been dismissed as a disciplinary case. But here, her belongings suggested she had come dangerously close to something real before being pushed out. A distant mechanical hum deepened through the walls, changing rhythm as if responding to activity somewhere within the facility. One by one, machines behind a closed door began powering down in sequence, creating an eerie sense of controlled shutdown rather than random failure. From deeper inside the darkness, a voice broke through the silence, calm and deliberate, calling out with certainty that someone was no longer alone. Begin with an emotional hook. The school had destroyed a young girl's reputation to protect adults with power. Ethan hides behind stacked crates as two unknown men enter the underground lab. Their behavior suggests they are not ordinary school employees. He hears enough to understand that Lily Mercer had been framed after asking questions about late-night activity. Introduce Lily as a brilliant but poor scholarship student from a working-class neighborhood. Add discrimination angle. Wealthy parents treated Lily like she never truly belonged at Ridgewell. The school quietly removed her, calling her a thief, while the real criminals stayed protected. Ethan's motivation deepens because his own life has taught him what it feels like to be ignored by powerful people. He finds a torn disciplinary report signed by Headmaster Victor Hale. The report claims Lily broke into restricted school property, but the time stamp matches one of the suspicious late-night deliveries. Ethan realizes Lily may have seen the underground entrance and been punished for it. He escapes the underground area through a second tunnel leading near the athletic field. Outside, he finds Marla waiting near the fence, terrified. Marla reveals through narration that Caleb Rusk, the missing chemistry teacher, had tried to report the basement before disappearing from the school. Ethan now understands this is bigger than one hidden room. The lab may be protected by school leadership, private security, and possibly local officials. Ethan decides to find Lily before the people behind the lab find him. Cliffhanger. When Ethan reaches his car, Lily Mercer is already sitting in the back seat, shaking and covered in dust. Write a section named Insert Section Name in a specific tone aligned to the overall theme. Use third-person narration. Ensure smooth transitions from a previous section. Strictly follow the assigned word count. Add one strong emotional or intellectual hook inside the section. Avoid repeating earlier scenes. End with a clear cliffhanger sentence that leads into the next section. Keep it under 550 words. Lily Mercer was not running because she was guilty. She was running because she had seen something no student was ever meant to see. A dead man's watch lying beneath a school that was supposed to protect her. That single detail stayed with her more than anything else, because it proved someone had already vanished inside the system long before she was ever blamed. Ethan Vale did not ask questions immediately. He helped her leave the campus boundary first, keeping them both in shadows along the edge of the athletic field until the school lights faded behind them. Only when distance created safety did the truth begin to surface. Lily's version of events unfolded in fragments, shaped by fear and exhaustion. She had been tutoring younger students after hours, a quiet routine that kept her close to the school but invisible to most staff. One evening, she noticed Headmaster Victor Hale entering the gym storage building with two unfamiliar men. Their presence did not match any faculty or maintenance schedule she had ever seen. Curiosity pulled her closer. From a distance, she followed, careful not to be noticed. That decision led her to something she could never unsee. A hidden stairwell, partially exposed behind storage equipment, leading downward into parts of the building that should not have existed on any official map. She did not understand the full structure below, but she recognized something personal in the chaos. Caleb Rusk's watch lay on the ground near the corridor entrance. Caleb had been the one teacher who treated her like more than a scholarship student. He had encouraged her interest in chemistry, always patient, always observant. Seeing his watch there was not just strange, it was wrong. Days later, everything changed. Lily was accused of theft, questioned aggressively, and threatened with criminal charges if she spoke about anything she had seen. The message was clear without needing to be spoken. Silence would protect her future, but truth would destroy it. Ethan realized then that Caleb Rusk likely never chose to resign. His disappearance aligned too closely with what Lily had witnessed. Inside a safer space miles away from the school, Lily pulled out what she had managed to save. Hidden photos on a small device showed fragments of the underground facility, delivery routes, storage markings, and documents she had copied before fleeing. The images connected more than just physical space. They connected money. Invoices linked shipments to school accounts, renovation budgets approved by the board disguised funding channels. And buried within financial records was a recurring name that widened the scope of the entire operation: Monroe Voss, a powerful school board donor with political influence and connections far beyond Ridgewell Preparatory School. His involvement transformed the underground facility from a hidden violation into something far more structured. The school was not just concealing something. It may have been built to conceal it. The realization shifted everything. This was no longer an isolated secret under a single building. It was a system protected by reputation, money, and authority, a structure designed so that no one would believe it existed even if they saw it. Ethan and Lily agreed on the only path left that made sense. Local authorities could not be trusted. The evidence needed to reach federal oversight before it could be buried or erased. As they moved through the city, Ethan noticed the same black SUV twice. First near an intersection, then again 2 blocks later. It was not random. It was tracking them. Phones, movement, patterns, everything likely exposed. They changed direction and hid in Ethan's small apartment, staying off main lights, avoiding sound, watching for any sign of pursuit. But the sense of safety did not last. When Ethan finally opened the apartment door after a brief silence outside, something on the floor stopped him instantly. His younger sister's medical bracelet was lying there, abandoned in plain sight. The moment Ethan Vale saw the medical bracelet on his apartment floor, the entire investigation stopped being about secrets beneath a school. It became personal in a way that stripped away every layer of distance he had tried to maintain. The truth no longer lived underground. It had reached into his life and taken something irreplaceable. His first reaction was panic, immediate and uncontrolled. The apartment felt smaller, every shadow sharper, every sound outside the door suddenly meaningful. Someone had been inside. Someone had moved through his space with enough confidence to leave a warning instead of taking anything else. That detail was worse than forced entry. It was control. Nora Vale was not inside the apartment. That absence confirmed the fear Ethan did not want to acknowledge. The bracelet was not misplaced. It was placed, deliberately, as a signal. A message was left without words, but its meaning was unmistakable. If Ethan continued toward authorities or exposed what he had seen beneath Ridgewell Preparatory School, his sister would become the consequence. Not immediately, not visibly, but inevitably. For a moment, Ethan's resolve fractured. Everything he had uncovered, the hidden facility, the names, the money trails, collapsed under the weight of a single reality. The people behind it were no longer protecting a secret. They were enforcing silence. Lily Mercer stepped closer, steadying the moment without needing to speak directly. Her presence grounded him enough to keep him from breaking entirely. She understood this pattern better than anyone. Silence was not a byproduct of power. It was a tool that had kept Ridgewell's truth buried for years. Ethan forced himself to look back at the evidence. The urgency shifted from emotional reaction to structured survival. Lily reopened her hidden files, scanning through images she had taken during her escape. Most were fragments of the underground operation, but one stood out: a wall calendar inside the lab. A specific date circled in dark marker: the upcoming Founders Gala. The event was more than a celebration. It was a convergence point. Wealthy families, donors, board members, and local officials all gathered inside the school. A controlled environment filled with distraction, attention, and access. Ethan realized instantly what that meant. It was not just an event. It was timing. If something needed to be moved, erased, or completed, the gala provided cover. Security would be focused on guests. Systems would be overloaded with activity. And beneath that noise, operations could be finished without interruption. The shift in understanding changed everything. This was no longer about exposing a hidden lab. It was about preventing a final action before it disappeared forever. Ethan contacted Marla Quinn. Her response came with hesitation, then confession. She had kept something from him longer than she intended. Before the basement was officially sealed, she had retained an old access card that still bypassed certain maintenance locks. She had never used it, but she kept it. Then she revealed something even more significant. Caleb Rusk had left behind a safety deposit key before he vanished completely from school records. That key did not open doors. It opened proof. Inside the deposit box were copies of invoices, audio recordings, and a written statement naming Headmaster Victor Hale and Monroe Voss directly. The implication was unavoidable. Caleb had not been careless. He had prepared for consequences he knew were coming. The investigation was no longer discovery. It was exposure strategy. Ethan, Lily, and Marla began forming a plan built around the gala itself. Not avoidance, but infiltration. Not waiting, but interruption. They would enter during the chaos, retrieve what Caleb had left behind, and force the truth into the open before it could be erased. But even as planning solidified, danger tightened its grip. Surveillance patterns suggested they were being tracked continuously. The criminal network was not reacting. They were coordinating. That realization made what happened next even more devastating. A live security feed flickered onto Lily's device. The school's internal cameras were still active, still streaming. And inside one corridor Ethan recognized instantly, Nora Vale was visible, alive, but restrained, being held in the same underground area he had discovered earlier beneath Ridgewell Preparatory School. Upstairs, Ridgewell Preparatory School transformed into a spectacle of wealth and celebration. Donors laughed beneath golden lighting. Champagne glasses clinked in polished hallways, and music flowed to the building like a carefully rehearsed performance. Yet beneath the same structure, a kidnapped girl waited in silence, and a hidden operation prepared to erase itself in real time. The Founders Gala was in full motion. Parents in tailored suits and designer dresses filled the main hall, while students and staff moved through the crowd as controlled participants in a carefully staged narrative. At the center of it all, Headmaster Victor Hale stood on stage delivering a speech polished to perfection, speaking about safety, excellence, and moral leadership as if those words defined the building rather than concealed its truth. Ethan Vale entered through a service corridor using Marla Quinn's old access card. Every step forward felt like crossing into a controlled collapse of two realities, one built on celebration, the other on concealment. Lily Mercer moved separately through the crowd, keeping her head low, blending into the edge of recognition. If anyone from Ridgewell's past identified her, the entire plan could unravel instantly. Marla, positioned near the administrative wing, triggered a minor records office alarm as planned. The distraction was subtle but effective. Security personnel shifted attention away from the main hall, pulled toward a problem that seemed administrative rather than critical. Ethan used the opening to reach the gym storage entrance. The hidden panel responded to the access mechanism, revealing the stairwell once more. But this time, the underground space was different. The lab was already being cleared. Workers moved with urgency, carrying sealed boxes through the tunnel system toward the athletic field exit. The operation was not hidden anymore. It was in motion, collapsing under pressure, executing its final phase before exposure. And then Ethan saw her. Nora Vale was tied near a support pillar, alive but restrained, positioned as leverage rather than target. The sight collapsed every layer of restraint Ethan had been holding. For a moment, everything narrowed into a single instinct. Run to her, free her, end it immediately. But the consequences pressed in just as fast. If he acted too early, the workers could escape. If he waited too long, Nora could be moved or silenced before anything was proven. That tension became the most dangerous point of the entire investigation. Survival versus truth, both pulling in opposite directions. Above them, Lily accessed the school's presentation system through Caleb Rusk's recovered drive. Her hands moved fast, feeding the hidden files into the gala's main display network. If it worked, every guest upstairs would see what was happening beneath their feet. Monroe Voss noticed the disruption first. His expression shifted from control to calculation. Within moments, he ordered private security to lock down the building. Doors were secured, exits monitored, movement restricted. Ethan moved anyway. He reached Nora, cutting her restraints and pulling her free just as underground alarms triggered across the facility. The sound echoed through concrete and steel, signaling that the hidden system had detected intrusion and exposure simultaneously. Lily's upload began, but the system stalled mid-transfer. Progress froze, caught between completion and failure. Above, Headmaster Victor Hale disappeared from the stage without announcement. Below, the underground corridor shifted into full alert state. Ethan turned, pulling Nora close, expecting escape routes to close behind them, and at the entrance to the underground stairwell, Hale stood waiting, no longer on stage, holding a gun steady in his hand. The collapse of Ridgewell Preparatory School's perfect reputation did not begin with an announcement. It began with exposure. In a single moment, the carefully constructed image of excellence shattered in front of the same people who had funded, protected, and celebrated it. Beneath the school, Hale stood at the entrance of the underground corridor, weapon lowered but control still in his posture. Ethan Vale held Nora close, positioning himself between her and the threat, while Lily Mercer fought against the stalled system upload upstairs. The air felt divided between silence and imminent collapse. Monroe Voss, realizing the situation was no longer containable, attempted to escape through the service tunnel network. But Marla Quinn acted first. With a level of resolve no one expected from someone who had spent decades buried in records, she locked down the service gate mechanism, trapping the exit route and forcing movement back toward the main structure. Upstairs, the gala screens flickered violently. Then, one by one, they activated. Invoices appeared first. Delivery records tied directly to school accounts. Then, hidden camera footage from the underground facility. Then Caleb Rusk collected files, including his final documentation. Finally, the image that silenced the entire hall. Proof that Lily Mercer had been framed after discovering what no student should have ever seen. The transformation was immediate. Wealthy parents stopped mid-conversation. Donors froze with drinks in hand. Officials who had spent years endorsing Ridgewell's reputation watched evidence overwrite every assumption they had ever made about the institution. Panic spread to the gala like a collapsing structure. Within minutes, federal agents arrived at the scene, already in possession of Caleb Rusk's safety deposit evidence and Ethan's emergency upload attempt. The convergence of independent proof sources made denial impossible. The system had been breached from every direction at once. Downstairs, Hale attempted to reassert control, insisting on authority, identity, and order. But the underground footage now looping upstairs had already dismantled his credibility. Every word he spoke was drowned by visual proof that contradicted it. Monroe Voss was intercepted near the athletic field tunnel with documents still in his possession. He did not escape the perimeter. The system he helped protect no longer protected him. Lily Mercer stood among the chaos upstairs as her name was restored in real time. The public correction came quickly, but the emotional damage could not be erased at the same speed. Years of accusation did not vanish just because truth finally arrived. Ethan Vale carried Nora out of the underground structure as security and agents moved in. His hands trembled not from injury, but from proximity to loss. She was safe, but the memory of how close he came to not finding her stayed heavier than anything else. Later, Marla Quinn revealed Caleb Rusk's final message. He had prepared for failure, not survival. His request was simple in structure but heavy in meaning. If he disappeared, someone had to protect the students and expose what was beneath Ridgewell, no matter the cost. The school was shut down pending full investigation. What remained of its reputation dissolved under federal oversight and public scrutiny. But even after the arrests, closures, and confirmations, the truth left behind something unresolved. The real horror was not that evil had existed beneath Ridgewell Preparatory School, but that so many powerful people had walked above it for years, pretending not to hear it breathing beneath their feet. Months later, Ethan Vale received an unmarked envelope at his apartment. Inside was a new architectural blueprint, folded carefully with no return address. The final page showed a single red circle marking a basement that officially did not exist.